Today's been one of the
Exactly.
days where I'm not.
Well, you don't even need tenure.
My emails all.
I'd have to rob a bank. That's your job.
No, but
Meeting
Yeah,
days.
no, it's-
Somebody sent me with something within the last 5 hours. It's probably, I'm not aware of the urgent message.
I've been there. I understand.
It's an interesting experience. That would have been a neat place to, I've not been there, so it's on my list of places to go. His wife used to make like the best egg rolls I've ever had in my life.
yeah, there's a lot of that food.
Very aggressive body language, excuse me. I'm fine, I'm just keeping my thoughts.
All right, everybody, thanks Stephanie for the setup and recommendation.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we like it. It's good.
You were getting kudos when you weren't here, so I felt like you needed them when you walked in.
Couldn't use as many of those.
Oh, it's great.
Good.
I feel like I'm straight in the line of campfire.
I know, it will quickly become the least favorite spot, I'm sure.
You just need a bigger name tag and then you can hide behind it.
Okay.
Like when we were little and used to read the cereal boxes and hide behind, maybe that was just me.
No?
Because I had a sibling.
Captain Crunch was really interesting.
Either way.
Those boxes were good. They had word searches on.
Yeah, they did.
All kind of stuff.
I am so disappointed that I grew up before Captain Crunch screwed up and made just the Crunch Berries version.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's right.
You know, I mean, didn't you entire your childhood, you're thinking, if I could just have just the berries.
And
No.
now
Now they do it.
You can still
Like
enjoy it.
berries.
I don't like having crunch.
Oh, I love Captain Crunch, but no berries.
that I would have.
Oh, okay.
Please, so I can stop.
Quisp? Do I need to read the attending and viewing component? I can't remember. Do I need to read that, or was that just
Yeah.
me?
We did read it out loud, so
And then
yes.
we just jump to opening for
Yes.
public comment?
And things on our way over.
Okay,
So,
And Cedar Rapids still smells like.
yes.
okay.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, it's 4:33, so we'll get started. I'll start by reading this statement around attending and viewing the meeting. Citizens can attend in person in meeting room C, first floor of Rochester Public Library, or view a live stream of the meeting on the library's YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/user/RochPubLibrary. A recording will be available after the meeting on the city's website, which is rochestermn.gov/agendas. I will now open us for public comment. Do we have any comments from the public this morning, today?
And I do want to note that we did have written comments that were submitted and included in the board packet.
Thank you. Okay. Hearing no public comments, I will turn it over to Antonia to call us to order.
Thank you. So we're going to conduct roll call. It's really funny because I want everyone to raise their hands, but that's just a symptom of Teams era. So, gosh, how do we roll call? We're not on Teams anymore. I can see everyone. Is that just a leftover component of last time?
No, usually you're just establishing quorum.
Okay, good. I feel like my mind
I
is
think,
like-
I know, I am as well, and you see, Perna is in the building, taking our
I
notes
know.
from afar, but I would normally look to her, but
Thank you, Steve. I think it's just we've been on Teams for so long that I'm like, do we actually do this?
Normally your recording secretary just called.
Perfect. So I'll just go through everyone, starting with Steve.
Sure.
Nick. Stephanie.
Present?
Holly. Present. Erin.
Here?
Kristen.
Here.
And I am also here. In case anyone was wondering. So we're officially called to order, and now we're going to start with the approval of the agenda. Do we have any questions? And if not, may I have a motion?
I would move we approve the agenda as is.
I second.
Perfect. Agenda is approved. We move on to the consensus agenda. Are there any questions on the consensus agenda? All right, hearing none, may I have a motion to approve?
So,
Do we have a second?
Second.
Can I clarify? Does that include the
Yes.
minutes or not?
It does include minutes.
Then I would ask that we approve the minutes for the July meeting separately.
Okay, all right, is that all right? Karen, do you mind? So we're going to ask for an approval of the consensus agenda excluding the July minutes. Is there anyone taking record today?
yeah.
Oh, she's upstairs though, you said?
Yes.
Got you. Perfect. So Joe, we have a motion to approve consensus agenda excluding July minutes, so excluding 5A2. Perfect. Do we have a second?
I'll second Pagel.
Thank you. All right, the consensus agenda passes with the exception of the July minutes. So Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, just with the July minutes, I think they should just end after Aaron's note that we don't have quorum. Otherwise, somebody going forward might say these things were all still addressed.
Oh.
And so just for clarity, it should just end. Does that make sense?
Just pulling them up again as a point of reference. Any questions or comments? I'm going to also pull them up.
No, I agree. Thanks for
Yeah,
that
that's a great,
suggestion.
yeah, I was just gonna say that's.
Okay.
All right.
It looks like they're magically here. See, otherwise just get it one more.
Yeah, the comment underneath.
And just take, even before it says public comment, just strike everything else. Because otherwise.
Got you.
Look at it. Somebody might perceive
Other
it as,
things
oh, they
were
still
addressed.
addressed all these
Yes,
things.
yes,
even though they didn't have-
I think that's a really good point. So Perna, since you're up there in the sky, can you please strike everything after Aaron's comment and then we'll wrap in the July minutes into the next packet for approval? Include that in the consensus agenda of the following one.
And I will clarify with the city clerk on what her guidance is. We're trying to have uniformity, and I don't know what but I will clarify. I will double check and
So
get back to you
we'll
as well.
include what we're allowed to include based on their response. But I think that's a really valid point. People may not understand that nothing was addressed.
Right.
The motion to approve July minutes,
As amended.
waiting
Yeah.
clerk's approval.
Right.
We have to get since we have to get the weigh in, I think we'll just wrap it into the consensus agenda from the next one. And then that way we'll also learn and come back to it.
Fabulous. I'm curious about this for my own work, so can't wait to learn.
All right, so we've done that, and now we can move on to president's business, starting with a foundation report.
Okay, this is Brenda Prada for the foundation. We're just starting to try to work out some of the details for With Wisdom and Wine and the holiday shopping auction in our new kind of living space where things are still all up in the air. We don't know what's going on with the pandemic, so we're just kind of starting to ask questions so we can get better informed to move ahead on those. But the date is the 28th of January, the last Saturday in January, as it's always been, so.
Perfect.
Oh, and then we did get 1,500 from the Charter House sidewalk sale. And I just found out today we got from the roundup at People's Food Co-op about $450.
Nice.
Wow.
Awesome.
Any questions for Brenda? No, but a little finger snap kudos.
Yeah. And just kudos to the great community partners that we have too, supporting the library in those ways.
Agreed. Next, we have a Friends report.
Hi, I'm Val with the president of the Friends, and going back to June, the Friends made $8,000 at the Rochester Fest auditorium sale, which we were very appreciative of. For the bookstore, they made $5,900 in June, and they made $8,000 in July. And the reason that we made so much more in July is they had a art sale in the lobby area, and they also did a week-long half-price inventory reduction summer blowout sale. In June, there was no extra extraneous lobby sales. Those lobby sales really help draw foot traffic into the bookstore. Some upcoming events, the Elton Hills Bridge Reopening Community Event, that's on Friday, August 26th. The Friends is going to be having a booth there, selling used books as well as membership drive and handing out coupons for people to come into the bookstore. That same Friday and Saturday, the bookstore is going to hold another lobby sale with excess inventory of large print, vintage, and poetry. We'll be sending out membership drive letters for renewals in September, and our next auditorium sale is October 13th through the 16th.
I have to say, I'm always incredibly impressed by how much the Friends generate, given that I purchase books for $1 at the bookstore. So in my mind, that's 8,000 individual sales, if not more. So thank you so much. Any questions? Yeah, another finger. Any other questions? Stephanie, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. Do we have a Selco report today? We do not. So we also don't have a youth rep report, to my knowledge, so we can move right on to the policy committee report.
Alrighty, so we as in the wonderful folks I've been working with, Heather and Beth and the Welcome In Committee and every staff at the library helped work on 3 library policies for your approval. And I should have memorized this. I read it before I got here, so I apologize for not knowing exactly which ones. But there's 3 of them. I believe one is the
Library space policy.
Yep, and
Check out periods and fee policy.
yes.
And the, I think that's it.
Oh.
There we go.
Yep, so the goal with the library space policy is to make it more concise and a little bit shorter, cut out some of the verbiage from the meeting rooms because there's a separate policy for that now. So hopefully you read over anything, any questions that I will definitely try to answer.
There was a piece of feedback
Lovely.
that I wanted to share, and it's specific to the portion of the library space policy that says space may not be used for activities that promote or sell products or services, and a certain concern that it may interfere with the activities of our Friends bookstore. So I was wondering if it could be reworded to specify external vendors versus library endorsed or library vendors.
Affiliated maybe, like, because the
Yeah.
foundation will be in the same situation.
Exactly. I
Okay.
worry that if we open the language too much, then people may think we're inviting affiliates. So there may be some refinement there to make sure that it's specifying activities that stem from the library that are selling, are endorsed.
Okay.
Those external are not, but that is a change we will need to make.
Okay, that's a good point. Thank you. Noted.
Any other feedback?
So are we okay to, if, any questions on the next one, check out the fee policies? So, would the motion to be approve the checkout, fee and periods, and then table the library space still for more review by the policy committee?
Perfect.
Okay, so those are two separate motions, right?
Yes. So first of all, thank you, Brenda, for that piece of feedback. I think it was a really good highlight and it's
Yes.
really appreciated.
Thank you.
So we're going to table the review of the library space policy. You can have it brought back at the future meeting just because we want to, review what comes next. But can we have a motion for approval of the checkout periods and fee policy?
I move to approve Pagel.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any dissent? All right, that passes. So do we have another one? Is there another one that you wanted to review or that's it? Because I did see that the meeting room requirements were removed from the library space policy. Is that a separate policy
That is
to
separate.
come?
It's a separate policy.
To come, okay, perfect. All right, so any questions for Kristen on the policy committee review of the existing policies? All right, we can move on to new business. Thank you.
Welcome.
So, we are going to talk a little bit about our space. This is one of those things that has been a long-standing issue with the library building. We do have we have had a lack of space and have struggled to figure out how to best continue to meet the needs for the public, as knowing that the public's going to continue, our population will continue to grow, and how do we best meet those needs, and how do we work lockstep with city council. So in the 2022-2023 action plan, which unfortunately that's a little bit challenging to view that way. This item is included in the city's overall action plan to explore space options to meet service and programming needs at the library. So we do, it's on the radar of city council that you're ready to have some kind of discussion. So just as a reminder for folks newer to the board, the last time we really discussed this was 2021. Really, there was just an update to the board where we kind of gave a timeline of where we've been and what we've done with no decisions made. Of course, the proposal for the post-bulletin project, the public-private partnership proposal, that was not a library board initiated proposal. That was a private developer initiated proposal. And that did not go anywhere. So nothing really has been done over the last year and the beginning of this year, obviously with the change in leadership, change in board members, change in just life as we know it over the last couple of years. Not a lot has been done in that space. Back in 2021, the board was very committed that the library has outgrown its space and that the library needs to stay downtown. There needs to be a downtown presence. And those were
Okay.
two pieces that were, I think, reiterated by the board.
I was going to ask for a clarification here because I think when you read the library needs to stay downtown, it sounds that the board is requesting that the library in its entirety remain downtown. So if we could just amend that to say the library needs to maintain
A
a
downtown
physical, like a
presence.
downtown presence.
Yes.
I think people in the community seeing that may worry that we're committing to it being downtown. That's not the case.
Yes. All options are on the table. No
exactly.
decisions have been made. Thank you. I think we worded it better in that newsletter, one sheet, that the library must maintain a downtown presence. I should have copied the words exactly. Thank you for that clarification. Again, in our action plan for the overall city, we have this exploring space needs option. So I've been working with city administration and having conversations about how do we best facilitate conversations with city council and with the library board. And so what we'd like to propose is doing a joint meeting, a study session with city council in November, and either have an additional meeting that is a study session and then our regular board meeting, or have that be the meeting for that month, to at least be in the same room and get on the same page of where we're at, where we've been, what our needs potentially are, what, just presenting information. So I would love for us to be able to do that. And in preparation for that, knowing that we've had challenges really even meeting together and pulling our committees together, just pulling together an ad hoc work group so that we have a little more flexibility in meeting. Because again, we're not making any kind of decision. It's about pulling information together that can be shared and reviewed and looked at in a very public meeting, the study session. So I think having an ad hoc or an informal work group, it gives us that ability to be much more nimble and flexible with our meetings, because it's not necessarily one that needs to be an open meeting, and just gives us that, again, that flexibility.
I do want to make a note. I recognize most of the members are new, so this is more so for the community. Not that people are here, but just in case. That one of the differences about how we talked about approaching the space needs conversation moving forward is the incorporation of city council allows them to represent the perspective of their constituents. So the community knows that we've done this work 3 times over the last decade. And unfortunately, we haven't really determined a direction. But I think one of the differences of this approach is that incorporating city council allows us to get community perspective specific to the different areas of Rochester. So I think that there is a change to how we're approaching this conversation, and I think it'll be more successful.
And that would be in November?
Yeah, so the open study session date is November, I think it's the 14th. It's a Monday. City council meets for study sessions on Mondays. It would be a Monday afternoon, 3:30 meeting. Probably here in the auditorium, what I'm hoping would be such an appropriate space. So yeah, that's the date that is not booked by other things that the city council is looking at and studying.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'll send a calendar invitation and send one of the board that, well, to all of us, so that we can, perhaps we could at least watch, remember, know this is going on.
Oh, so I would want the entire board to be there. This would be.
Oh, no, I'm just
everybody
asking
at the table, but.
For an invitation.
Oh,
So I don't forget.
yes.
It's really hard for me to put these.
Once you
in my
give me
phone.
that direction, yes.
And just to clarify, Karen, this is an activation presentation in a way, right? It's meant to activate city council engagement moving forward, not just a point of information.
It is a study session, which is study session, there is no action.
Yeah, no action, but it's meant to activate engagement. Like, we don't plan on just giving them information and walking away. We plan on giving them information and engaging with them following that session.
Without knowing what will be the outcome of that meeting, I think I am not sure. I don't know what that will mean. I don't know if, I don't know what the city council's approach or response will be. Yes, I mean, ideally, that would be the beginning of laying a foundation for further meetings and further exploration.
I just want to make sure that that is an intentional thing that we communicate to city council. Like, we're not just telling you things so that you know it. We would like you to create a perspective and decide if you want to engage with us moving forward.
We want to figure out how to solve together.
Exactly.
And has there been previous discussions with the city council regarding this issue?
So
I mean, kind of off and on?
I would say there have been discussions, but I don't know how. I think there's been a lot of work, library board doing work, again, setting that vision and sharing that vision and working down a path of this is a solution that we see, and then asking for support, and not necessarily a working together to, again, collaborate on coming to a solution. I mean, we know that we're out of space, like the building.
And this is nothing new to the city council. They
Yeah.
are quite aware of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a champion from the council or from city administration that have you initiated this or have they initiated this?
I would say it's a joint initiation as far as, I mean, we're part of the action plan, so that a joint study session has been on the tickler list. And I have definitely advocated that we have a joint meeting. I think there's value in having a meeting together. So
For perspective and to give credit to historical efforts, the relationship between the library and the city when it comes to space has been, I would say over the past decade, more of an approval relationship. Like, this is our plan. Do you endorse it? These are our needs. Do you endorse it? And I think when we realized those efforts, and that comes over even from the previous president and administration, like when we realized give them a whole team. When we realized those efforts were not effective because it's too costly, or we weren't feeling like we were being prioritized, we realized that a collaborative approach would probably be more effective. And so that's now bleeding into this presidency. Chair, I can't English today. I apologize, Karen. Director, thank you. Directorship. So this is a new approach that's being tried, but it began under Audrey because we did have one-on-ones with almost all of the city council members, and they all stressed how important the library is. So we have their willingness to engage. It's now to figure out how we collaborate, which we haven't done yet. That hasn't been the nature of the relationship before.
And we hope that will take place in November with this meeting. I mean, a start anyway.
Yeah, I think that's what Karen's hoping.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, it articulates here options. So are we able to provide them options, or are we only talking about what our needs are and then ask them to tell us what options are acceptable? How are you going to approach that?
Really, so, again, library board owns that strategic vision and strategically providing for the community. City council makes decisions on funding said vision. So I think options would probably be a good, I mean, we wouldn't be able to necessarily provide wholly accurate cost estimates for buildings, let's say, but we could provide, what are a range of options that would be or should be explored?
When I guess the question is what is currently viewed as that continuum, right?
Yeah, there's a ton of work and money, by the way, went into this already. So we do have a number of options. Library puts money into existing physical infrastructure, knowing that we will not be able to expand or give the community all the needs that they want in this space. We're very limited. Library maintains this physical presence and establishes branches across Rochester. Library establishes one single other branch that provides nearly good of services. What was the other? There were about 5 different options. There was another space that was also downtown that was potentially available we could move to. So reestablish a singular library presence downtown. So just to recap, it's downtown, branches, downtown, in current location, downtown somewhere else, multiple branches, or one other, due to the cost of duplication.
Didn't we have another one where we were expanding vertically on this building?
Yes, and then I remember they said that we could potentially use the parking ramp space, and that could maybe be an option, but it did seem like that could be costly and potentially be similar to new space expansion, but you're right, that was another option. So maybe for the sake of the new board that we have, if we could dust off the old options document and provide it to this group before we meet with council in November, that would probably inform your opinions and perspectives.
Would that require kind of a subcommittee approach?
The dusting off?
Well, yeah, well,
Maybe
not just dusting off, but looking at it again and refocus it to what we're talking about right now with the city council.
Could we have a Q&A session with you without it being a formal meeting, just so we could go through the options and ask questions and make sure we're all well informed?
It would have to be a formal
It
meeting.
would have to be, okay.
So
Who did the design work for us? Did we use some consulting?
we brought consulting in because we had a group assembled to revise our approach to space planning in 2020.
19 maybe.
19 was the.
2019, yeah. So the one thing I would say, Nick, is I think we should have a session where we engage in the options again. For the sake of November, I would recommend, not prescriptive, but that we dust off all options as a thought starter, just because we're not anywhere near the point of actioning a single option.
But maybe sending what exists to everyone so we.
Yes, agreed, definitely.
When again, if you're looking at a November timeframe, that means we have to have anything we want to give them ahead of time done by October,
Yeah.
right? Which means that at our next meeting, that should probably be our primary focus as far as, okay, here's what the options were, send that to us sooner, not later, I would hope. And then maybe engage somebody from that consulting company or whoever feels comfortable who managed that process to be here to kind of take us through the options, look at what they are, and see if maybe the staff between now and then could articulate these are the assumptions that have changed, if that makes sense.
And I think really what we do have is a building program of the space that we need to fulfill the strategic plan. Some things that
Pre-COVID though.
It is pre-COVID.
A lot has changed in the world
A
now.
lot has changed. We have never really we've never brought an outside consultant in and had any kind of discussion branches wise. So options and information that we have is limited.
It is, and I will say I would chafe at spending money for anything just because we've done that repeatedly and it's been a cycle. What I would say, Steve, is I feel like what you're proposing is probably step 2, because we have not yet in the past, since COVID has begun, really gone to city council and say, okay, we have needs. They're becoming urgent. We need to have a conversation about how we collaborate on, prioritizing library space needs and solutions. I think given then their response to us, so we can then start dusting off choices and then start to reinvest in making those more realized for them. Because to your point, the building program was pre-COVID and our perspective on needs have probably shifted. But again, I can't prescribe, but I would really chafe at spending money because I watched us invest heavily and then it couldn't go anywhere.
Can I ask for background's sake, is the options that you have, were those done as staff recommendations with the consultants? Was there a community engagement process? And I'm asking this because we're bringing it to council and hoping they would become their partners. If you can tell them that there's already been a robust community engagement process, I think that will save a lot of time. If you can say these are the options that emerged. Otherwise, they are all going to want to take it back to their constituents and it could take another year. especially with the election cycle.
So it sounds like the pandemic put a lot of dust on this report.
Yes.
Yes, well,
I think it did.
it's still there. I'm sure it's valuable.
And the options were not produced by a consulting agency. I know, Erin, you're going to talk about that?
I was going to reference the P3 activity last summer. Maybe it was the summer before. I think it was last summer. We could also dust that off. That was in pandemic times. We were talking about some of those activities. I don't believe it's perfect, but it's some good background for members who weren't involved in that conversation.
Yes.
What is that?
What's P3 stand for?
Public-private partnership.
Okay.
We were approached by an external company looking to purchase this land at which the current library sits and other land, and they would build I believe it was the library, and it was some hotel or some apartments as a kind of a combination project. We went quite a ways with that pretty quickly, I thought, and then it just ultimately fizzled out. But good background information we could share there too, I think. Seems reasonable to me.
I would agree. And I also want to stress for you, Holly, that the options are not anything formalized. It was staff put it together based on community feedback and based on where the board was going. And it just covers the spectrum of what we can do. It's not at all any recommendations. We can go all the way from a single downtown location where we just put more money into this building, all the way to branches. Like none of it was prescriptive.
So you're trying to catch them up on where it is.
Yes.
And then, I don't know, would you be able to provide some kind of goal timeline of this is where we want to be by this date? This is the limitation on the needs that we have and what we won't be able to do if we don't get there by this date? Even if it's not the building, even if it's just, this is when we want a decision by, I think that could be a helpful thing to bring to them because the study sessions can go all over the place.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
And if you don't give them clear direction, then they now give
Take it over.
us whatever direction they want to or don't. So I would argue that whatever we have, we need a very clear agenda and a very clear set of goals and objectives, whether it's the plan and say, okay, which of these do you like? What kind of money or, would be potentially available, whatever, but the first thing they're going to ask for all those options is how much is it going to cost? So if we don't have some numbers, it's probably not worth going to them yet.
And Steve, what I would say though is I do think we need to have some sort of activation. That's why I was calling it an activation meeting,
Right.
where it's not at all, we're discussing options in a way that are making them real, but some sort of formal handshake, an agreement to future collaboration so we can start having regular conversations with them, dusting off things in conjunction. Because I think right now they're used to us just saying, can we get money? And them saying no. I mean, when I started on the board 6 years ago, I thought I was going to see some sort of definitive plan in a new building in my lifetime of like my tenure on the board.
I thought that's what we were doing here this year.
So
We're gonna get there.
So I just think what we need is some initial commitment to collaboration. So maybe if Karen, what we could get in the next meeting is maybe an outline of what we're going to cover with them and then what actions we're requesting from them moving forward, whether it's a future meeting in which we review old materials and old options, whether it's they come back and tell us what kind of likelihood for investment in the library we would see. I agree with Steve. We need something definitive so we can pull in that and move on to the next steps.
So is there a single dusty plan that exists now?
There's a thick stack that we had included in one of.
I mean, it's not a manageable thing that we could all see and have and be on the same page to start with.
Heard in the sky with them.
Yeah, I definitely, yes.
I mean, we don't all want 100.
Definitely have our building program, but again, that is a building program of this is the amount of space that you need to do what it is your strategic plan is that you need to do to provide for the community. I mean, it's really about, this is the number of square feet and this is the relationship to all of the things in the building to make that.
So it's more of like a
Yeah.
facility
It's
usage.
No, because we have more than that. The building plan was one component of the work that we did over the course of a year and a half. We have the building plan, we have all the notes from the sessions that we got together, we have the community engagement that fed into it. There was a packet, I don't know if Perna in the Sky remembers, that we put together for the board in 2019 prior to this getting dust on it. Do you remember that? It was
I do.
thick. I might have it in my own cabinet that had every single thing we've ever done related to building, planning. So I'll look in my records to see if it exists,
Okay.
but Perna might have like a quick pulse on where that is. Do you remember that?
I remember that.
It had everything in it.
And it was created because we had this exact same conversation
Exactly.
in 2019.
We're like, we don't know. Everything's been happening
Yeah.
over the course of 6 years.
I guess that gets me to another question. So Antonia and I will roll off at the end of the year. This conversation in November, it would be amazingly helpful if we could have the new board members sitting in on that, if this is a publicly available opportunity to them and they're identified. I don't know
Say,
November.
will they be identified?
I don't know. That's my question.
Probably not.
Yeah, they're usually not until the beginning of January,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Is that always the case? Does that have to be the case? Maybe pose it that way.
Numbers are good though.
Absolutely, but coming in new, it would just be wonderful to have all of this background, even if they're just sitting and listening.
I will say that the study sessions are all recorded and all publicly
Okay,
available.
that's
and
helpful.
all- I mean, so that is,
Catch up.
yeah.
Okay.
So, and tell me when to just shut up and move on, all right? But I think you need to change the goal for the meeting then. I would focus on just giving them an update about the library in general. And then say, these are all the wonderful things we're doing, right? Because the city council loves to hear how, any elected body wants to hear how wonderful they've been doing and how they've been great supporters, and thanks to their largesse, we can do all these things, right? And then at the end, talk about, in order to continue those things and continue along with our strategic plan, we need to do these things, which include, new building, different building, branch build, whatever, right? And then say, when can we discuss these further, but give them an overall view, so we're not just coming in and saying, well, we need money, which of course we are, but frame it in the context of, these are all the things that we're already doing that are going very well, that the community likes, especially where we can show community feedback of these things are going well, but these are the things we need to do yet. Does that make sense?
It does to me, and it's making me think of, we also need to know what it is we don't know and what the council wants us to know. I think there might be a good space for that as well.
What are their assumptions and concerns and going forward, right?
I'm aligned, and I would also request though that we highlight the urgency of our space needs issue. We're continuing to invest in a building that may not serve us.
Right.
Agreed,
Just say
agreed,
rapid,
agreed.
rapid as a present.
Someone's gonna record this and play it for you and be like, Steve, did you say that we need to compliment the city council? No, I'm just.
Yes.
Steve looks at the camera.
Absolutely.
I just swiveled towards you.
No, so I think what we're all asking for is maybe an outline of what we're gonna cover in November, in addition to a packet that condenses the very large packet we received, just bringing everyone up to speed on building, plan, and space needs. And then everyone can consume it and we can be aligned for the November meeting.
Do we do like an annual report to the city council on library programming?
So that has been, with COVID and with changes in leadership, that has been different. There was a time that was happening every year or for years. And it's a little bit, I'm not sure what that is going to look like moving forward, because that did used to be a very standard practice.
It's sort of your state of the library address.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And then, because if you frame it in that way and have that conversation, then you could also very easily go and share that with the chamber and any other groups that might be willing to put some pressure on the city council to move forward, if that makes sense.
Are you all aligned?
Indeed.
So I'm hearing not a special work group. Staff will work and bring back an outline for our meeting in September, and then we can just further develop. It's great.
I think a work group would be premature at this point, but I think it would be the next, yeah. So we're all aligned. Thank you everyone for the discussion.
Yeah, good stuff.
So now we're going to move on to old business, and I'm going to publicly ask Erin to take over in 5 minutes because I have to leave for a work commitment. 5 minutes. So we can start with, sorry, we're moving on to directed informational items.
So
So
this is,
DEI action plan update.
yeah, so included in the packet, if you have any questions, please let us know. We are continuing our DEI work. I think one of the big things to highlight on here is making some progress on the community IDs. Remember that was brought to the library, again, by a community member, and it has made it past first reading of the ordinance. The first thing to do is to get an ordinance in place, and then a community ID program can begin. So the second reading of the ordinance is August 22nd. So that is moving along. Updating the policies, we should have 100% updated, yay, very soon. And that's it. Any questions from the report that was included?
No questions?
Great work.
Yeah, yes, it's wonderful.
Next up, we have Tammy Fritz. And you're welcome to come to the table. It's always awkward. Where do I stand or project really well because the microphones and turn it in the sky will need to hear.
Hello, I am Tammy Fritz and I am the Literacy Services Coordinator here at the library. Started last October, so I'm pretty new in my role here. Nice to meet everyone. I apologize, I will use my notes or I would talk for 7 hours about all the amazing things that we are doing here in Literacy Services. The Reading Champions is the team and the team of volunteers that I work with and coordinating with community partners. That is primarily my focus right now. The Reading Champions supports youth and adults in our community who do not read and write proficiently. And we do this by using proven scientific methods, including the Orton-Gillingham approach. If you are familiar, that is primarily used with those who show dyslexic characteristics, although not all of our students do. It works for everybody. Our tutors are highly trained, they are highly skilled, and they are highly dedicated. I've never worked with a group that is so fully invested in what they do. And since 2014, there's a little one-pager thing, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but since 2014, our results have been amazing. We tend to see nearly a 3 grade level increase with reading and about a 2.6 grade level increase with spelling. And that's roughly about 100 sessions, which are 45 to 60 minutes with our students. And the community need for literacy support continues to increase due to the pandemic and that learning loss that is associated with it. So we are hoping to expand, and we're looking into options, and that would involve recruiting additional tutors with diverse backgrounds. We're considering some alternatives to our current training method, and we're rethinking some of our community partnerships. The champions, like I said, the one pager is on there. At the bottom, it kind of summarizes a pilot program that we had with Dover Yoda Schools, and our hope was to get, we gave them some money, and our hope was to get in return a tutoring model for small groups that we could replicate in other districts. It didn't pan out exactly as we had hoped, but we are going to continue to work with them and support them through this next year, but we will not be giving them any additional money. So yeah, I think that's it. This is my first presentation ever. Well, they're so sweet. And I just want to be respectful of your time. If you have questions, you can try to answer them. If you want, I left a stack of business cards on the table too. You can reach out to me individually if you'd like additional information, whatever works best.
I have a very basic question on this program. Does it take place at the library, at schools, online, or some combination?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, again, with the pandemic, our main objective is safety. So we meet in public places with our students. We have a partnership with Hawthorne. So most of our adults are not in that building. We're working with RPS on a blanket policy so we can have access to students right after school because the research says we have a small window. If they go home and they sit in front of the TV, then they're not engaged again. So we are hoping to have access to all the students across. Yes, policy in place this fall yet. But we do we do tutor here in the library. We've got several tutors in the summer. This is a great place for them. And I will put my plug in. I really missed the 2-hour free parking. You have nothing to do with that, but that was a big one because the families we serve have a financial need, and paying for parking is prohibitive.
So I'm actually really glad you brought that up though, because I'm looking back at both Friends and Foundation, who typically have potential special projects that they're able to invest in from time to time, not putting you guys on the spot, but just saying there might be opportunities to solve that need.
Friends, amazing. They do support us. Foundation also, not gonna. Yeah, we have fantastic financial support through both of those.
I would be, yeah, the point about the parking is very interesting. The 2-hour free parking was CARES funded, and they didn't have the money to sustain it forever, but I think it was very, very popular downtown, and I haven't heard that perspective before, actually. I've heard a lot from business owners that made it easier for customers. I don't think that I'm supposed to cross-pollinate, but thank you.
Sure.
I will maybe reach out to you with my other hat on about that.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Tammy, I should leave, so I just want to tell you, thank you for sharing, and I think the work you guys do is amazing, so.
Thank you.
Sneak out.
So when you look at the growth, did you do the math to see, was there a significant difference? You're showing that there's growth with intervention was 24. I don't know what your scale was though.
Oh, yeah, that.
Child or-
So those numbers, so we're not comparing apples and apples. Those numbers were provided by Dover Yoda to us.
And they're out of
And
probably state testing.
some of it is state testing,
Okay.
some of it is their curriculum assessments, and some of it is some things they do differently in the classroom, just some standardized assessments. When our participants are screened, we use the Reading Center. We have a third party come in and do our pre and post assessments for us, and they use a little bit different tools for those assessments. But I get information from Dover Yoda too on what exactly they.
It would just be nice to see if there was really a significant difference or not.
Yeah. And it's a little different.
Oh, I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
Go ahead.
This was a pilot with Dover Yoda, so this was a unique situation and very different than the traditional RRC program. Lots of things learned, including different measurements and challenges. There were unexpected challenges, change in leadership here at the library, change in leadership, significant change in leadership in Dover Yoda. The things that you cannot predict when you're entering into a pilot that I think did kind of affect or change a little bit how the relationship works.
Did the pandemic have an effect?
This was just last year. I guess the pandemic affects everything. But I think the primary differences are that we work one-on-one with our students, and this was a small group of 3 students. It was a reading specialist who is Orton Gillingham trained, so she received training through us. And then it was additional daytime. So there's a number of differences, but our goal was to get something that we could go to RPS with and say, we did this here in Dover Yoda. Look how amazing it was. This is how we did it. These are our outcomes. Now let's do it.
Well, and I know specifically like talking with, Dr. Ruck, their new data research guy, the question he would ask is, well, was there a significant difference? Was there improvement, right? And so that would help sell it, I think, going to RPS.
We saw, they were thrilled. Dover Yoder was thrilled with what they saw. When we compare them with our traditional model, it's not as impressive. But again, they're kind of apples and oranges.
Okay.
So,
But the small group would have been ideal, right? To have 3 times the impact than a one-on-one. So knowing that would have been wonderful to show that they were the same. The fact that they still got some benefit and they still got,
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
Dover Yoder was happy with that is a really big deal, actually.
I agree.
I agree.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll jump then to our last topic, which is sharing strength, and I believe that was Kim.
Steve is going to give the technology. I'm here to talk about intellectual freedom. And I'm here to talk about it maybe in a more, what's the word I'm thinking for, urgent way than you have had intellectual freedom. That monitors challenges across the country. The Minnesota Library Association has a committee, Intellectual Freedom Committee, of which I was a chair many years ago. There used to be an organization in Minnesota called the Organization Against Censorship. Then they changed it to the Organization for Intellectual Freedom. And, through all of this years and years of stuff, there's some really good processes and some really good things that have been developed to help really articulate why intellectual freedom is important and what the library's role is in protecting it and why we protect it. Things are a little bit different right now. And I want the board to be very aware of what the Rochester's policies are and what we do about banned books, and also to reassure you a little bit about the community's value in intellectual freedom. Because sometimes it's really easy for the loud, small voices to be heard more than the average voice. So let's go through this. The largest number of books challenged in the United States at schools and public libraries happened in 2021. When I was lucky enough to go to the Public Library Association conference, job this last week because she was very vocal about free speech issues. And a lot of things are being targeted right now. One of the things I learned at Public Library Association is that there's a very well-funded national effort to bring to attention books that some people don't like and to try to get those restricted from people to borrow them. Let's go to the next one. At Rochester Public Library, anything's possible. We have really good processes to help us out. And one of the things that's really important to understand is some recent polling shows that, most people really don't want to be told what they can and cannot read or view or listen to, and that most people support intellectual freedom. And one of the things that I've learned is the process that we have in Rochester and libraries across the country is that when you have a formal challenge process, don't be afraid of it, because the process of discussing what people value and don't like about materials and having these conversations really helps all peoples get heard as to what their issues and concerns are, and a lot of times when reason wins out, it really heightens the value of intellectual freedom and why it's important.
My question about the slide, so 75% of Democrats oppose banning books
Correct.
and 58% of independents oppose and 70% of Republicans, people who self-identify as one of those parties.
Correct.
And nationwide?
Karen, you,
Yes, so this was one that the American Library Association facilitated earlier this year, and I can send out the full.
March 2022. And this was reported at PLA. And so what we find one of my favorite quotes, and I'm not going to get it right, was Dwight Eisenhower when he talked about how it's very important that public libraries across the nation be a trusted source for information. Once you start getting into the business of banning books and restricting access, the libraries become a less trusted space. So, and I think also the community trusts our processes. They trust that we're using reason in how we are managing our collections, managing our access, and so forth. And this was from the same thing. One of the things that you all, as a library board, maybe not you individually, but the Rochester Public Library Board has endorsed, is the Library Bill of Rights. Our collection development policy was recently reviewed in the last couple of years. Last year, I mean, so many have been updated. And so, and then with that Library Bill of Rights that affirms what we support and what we oppose, we'll go next to, we also highlight this to community with our Banned Books Week. We've been celebrating Banned Books Week for a number of years. It happens the end of September, the beginning of October. Yes, there's some really young pictures of some of us up there. And what I just really love about Banned Books Week is we highlight all the books that people have attempted to ban over usually the last year, but also over time. And people are really surprised. Well, two things. Why do you have banned books? If they're banned, you shouldn't have them. And then they look at some of the titles, Huckleberry Finn, or the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, or Captain Under. Why would people ban that? You know, so it gets people thinking about those ideas. We also had one that wasn't with Banned Book Weeks when there were some things going on in this country where intellectual freedom was very much challenged. And I always find those conversations enlightening. Even for people whose initial reaction is, you shouldn't have that. Then they look at Brave New World. Oh, yeah, maybe there's something there we should pay attention to. Next one. And so there's an organization that I think it's really useful to learn about. It's a national organization called Unite Against Book Bans. And one of the things that the people who are trying to restrict access like to do, whether they have children or don't have children, is it's about protecting the kids. We can't let our children read about Heather and her two mommies. My kids aren't ready for that. Not everybody's kids are ready for that. So it's important to have an understanding of that. Mark Twain would say, banning books is like telling an adult he can't have a steak because a child can't chew it. Or baby can't chew it. So, I mean, think about it in that context. I mean, we serve everyone. And one of the primary functions of our intellectual freedom policy for the library is we're not making decisions for your kids. You need to make those decisions for your own kids. If your child brings home something you don't want them to, it's a really good idea to have a conversation about that. And good for you for noticing what your kids are checking out. That's great. We want you to uphold your values, and we'll be happy to help give you lists that align with your values, help you pick those things. But we don't want you telling other families whose values might be different. For the families that exist in this community that have two mommies, maybe they need to see themselves represented as well. So to get involved and to learn about opportunities to be informed about intellectual freedom issues, we encourage you to sign up at ALA.org and their Office for Intellectual Freedom. Library advocacy is there as well. And again, what we're trying to do with our policy is we want collections that represent our community, where everybody can find themselves reflected in our collection. When people start trying to restrict certain books, you'll notice a theme. A lot of books that people are challenging right now are challenging books on LGBT issues and communities. Another common and popular area of challenge right now is that term critical race theory. You've heard of at the school board. A lot of people are starting to challenge books that show the lived experience of people of color. Are challenged, are we saying others, or do we want all of our community to be reflected? So I like that one. And, you know, the books that are immoral help us have a mirror on our own shame. The things that we have in our collection are part of our culture, the good and the ugly about our culture. And we believe that is important for us to understand our culture and to be a participant in how we want our communities to be. I'll go to the next one. What our process is right now. So if somebody is unhappy with a book or a movie or a program, we've expanded it beyond that. They can't just bring the DVD, this is pornography and it doesn't belong in the library, please get rid of it. You can't just bring that to the desk and expect the person there to get rid of it. We have a process. So it's like, oh, okay, I see you have some concerns about this DVD. You know, please tell me about them. You know, our selectors make decisions for our community, and we're happy to have them take a review of it, but I'll need you to complete this form. We need people to sign their name to their collection. We need people to have, think about what it is they're objecting to, why they're objecting to it, and write it down and sign their name. When they do that, it goes to a selector. I select the DVD collection, so I get a fair amount of these from time to time. And then I get to write a nice little response to the challenge. I usually provide copies of the reviews, why I bought it, and who it's for, right? So if I have something in the adult collection and a person is challenging it because they don't want their 5-year-old to watch it, you know, that's a different kind of response. You know, we don't think your 5-year-old should be unattended in the library, and we think this one is appropriate for adults. So we have that. Okay, so whenever I fill these out, I make sure I copy Karen. So she knows what's coming, right? And then the person who gets my response has the option to appeal it, right? So if I decide we're going to keep, but I'm a cheerleader in our collection because it's for teenagers and it's not pornographic and it has value and it's been won awards, I'm going to let Karen know that, but I'm a cheerleader, has been challenged. And if that person says, that Kim Edson, she's just one of those lefties, and I'm going to appeal to the director because this isn't right, then Karen gets to respond to that. Same person has the stuff that I provided, will of course listen to the concerns of the person who's creating the challenge or who's challenging the material, and Karen will write a response. And this is where you come in. If they don't like what I say, they don't like what Karen says, they're going to come to you. They might come to you right away anyway. Some people are circumventing the processes, but it's important for you as board members to know that that can happen, okay? And that we have a process that we follow and that we take things very seriously when we review them, and we do look at it carefully when we make that decision. So that is something that can happen. We are not seeing right now a huge uptick in challenges of materials, but we are starting to get some social media criticism of some of our programs. Oh, I don't know, like Queer Book Club, like Coming to the Table DEI education. So we are starting to see some of those people not happy with the direction that we're taking as a library. So we want to make sure that as a board, you're prepared for this in the event that it hits our community in a bigger way than it ever has in the past, which trends are saying maybe. Okay. And advocacy. Why you support intellectual freedom. Support us. There's a library in Iowa, Vinton, Iowa. Their board was not prepared for the challenges that came to them. They had a director who was berated because of some materials and some displays that they had. And the board didn't understand their role, didn't understand what the policies were. And it got so painful that that director quit. Okay, that's fine. They promote somebody within. They're the next director. The people challenging the books, hey, we were successful, we're going to challenge some more. Same thing. They actually had to close the library because they could not find staff. 3 directors left within a year and a half. So when I say this is serious business about board support, I am not kidding. I'd like to think that you all are more prepared, that we've done a better job with our board orientation on the issues of intellectual freedom. But sometimes when those challenges come unexpected, it's important to kind of step back and think about what your role is and how you can advocate for us. And I've just scared you all. These issues have been, it's been kind of like this through all the years. We're at a point right now where things are nationally kind of tough. Minnesota, we've been doing okay, but the challenges that you've seen at the school board could be turned to the library as some of these organized groups are starting to target libraries.
In very practical terms, if any one of us is approached and somebody skips the system or they elevate through you, what would you like us to do? Would you like us to CC you again for the first time, one of you, and say?
I have CC'd, I've started a message with a link to the page, web page that has all of our policies, including our collection development policy. And we would love for you to encourage them to use the identified procedure that we do have and start with the form. I was approached just within the last couple of weeks by a city council member who there was somebody going to a city council member to start this process. So starting with the form is the best process and procedure.
But do listen, right? Because I think sometimes all a person needs is to be heard, right? Sure. Sometimes listening can be one of the most important things you do. Thank you for sharing this concern with me. I can understand how this could be a challenge for you. The library has a process for how to handle that. Maybe you didn't know about that. Let me refer you to that. After you've listened, heard them out. If you, in that conversation, you get some clues that it might be bigger than just one person being unhappy, we'd certainly like a heads up.
About how many of these do you receive a week? About how many?
Really varies. We recently had, because this is such a national topic, we recently had a Freedom of Information Act inquiry, FOIA, right, about how many we've had to deal with.
Since 2019.
since 2019. And it wasn't that many. It was
4.
four.
That's
Oh,
very, so.
yeah, so not that bad.
Okay.
But that was since 2019. There was a period in the mid 2000s where there was one gentleman who just had a beef with our DVD collection. And I think at least once a month, if not twice a month, he would challenge a DVD in our collection. I'd write my little response. He'd write back something really nasty, but he never appealed it. And then he got tired of going through me, so they started challenging the youth materials, the DVDs. And then I think the last challenge he did, it was as a challenge for a youth DVD. And he says, and your colleague, Kim Edson, is so carefully aligned with the ALA, you know, she just makes really bad decisions. And, you know, and it was some really benign thing, you know. And it was funny because of all the years I've been doing challenges, I'll buy a movie and I'll go, oh, this one is going to get challenged. Nothing. And then the most benign thing, somebody won't like this is Spinal Tap. I had somebody say, why does this belong in the library and not a garbage heap?
I sadly would ask that same question. My son and I binge watched that this summer among our many crap that we watched.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would suggest don't buy Blades of Glory either. That could be the worst hour and a half of my life.
I missed all this.
Well, but if you talk to us at the desk about the kinds of comedy that you like, we will happily direct you into something that aligns with your sensibilities.
So I guess the question, go back to 4, so you got a very small end. In any of those cases, are there books that you said you're right, we shouldn't have that on the shelves?
We kept every item that was challenged and nothing came to the board. So in my almost 7 years working here, I have not seen one come to the board.
Right.
And
So there was one that I really early in my career here that was a young adult title. We reclassed as adult, and it was appropriate based on the review.
That's actually what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
You made it pretty clear that you really do think about it and put some thought into it, whether or not that is a valid request.
There was,
I'm glad to hear that sometimes we change action, and maybe it's not banning it, it's taking out of the collection or whatever, but changing the action.
so we did that with one of them. There was another one that I bought. I remember when I bought it and I thought, oh, this is a gross movie. And I looked at the Internet Movie Database and there were this many pages of reviews. So it was reviewed a lot. I wouldn't say it's well reviewed. It was reviewed a lot. I made a mistake. I didn't read those reviews. I just saw, hey, this has gotten a lot of buzz. It had gotten so many stars based on patron reviews, and it came from the community member who said they wanted it. I said, okay, I'll buy it. Well, a year and a half later, it got challenged, and it was a gross movie. Okay, it was about incest with the mother and the son. And I'm trying to defend why I bought this movie. It was an international film. And it was like, you know, this is a story that is part of our life. I mean, some people's lives, maybe it was an important story to be told. At least that's what I thought when I bought it and I saw those reviews. I started reading the review and so they handled the subject terribly. So I took it to Audrey at the time, who was the director, and we looked at it. We said, oh yeah, this was probably a mistake to buy it. And yeah, it's not so good. So if they appeal it, we'll get rid of it.
What are the lines, right? So you use the example of pornography, that we won't have pornography in our collection.
We have to be careful of that word pornography.
That's my question, is you decide what that line is.
Pornography is, it's a term that gets bandied about that has many different definitions. Do we have some sexually explicit materials in our collection? Yes, we do. Are we careful about the ones that we purchase? Yes, we are. It has to have a very important intention with it. One of the things that we often get, and it's particularly about rap music. Have you listened to rap music? Oh my gosh. Some of it is really good. A lot of it isn't to my taste, but I specifically purchase what the artist originally intended to do. And part of the reason I do that is because I'm a middle-class white person, right? Rap music is for a culture that isn't mine, and they have something to say, whether we're comfortable hearing it or not. And I don't like buying the edited version because that's not what the artist intended. So we often have people say, why do you have this version and not the one I hear on the radio? That is a decision we have. So yeah, there are some things that come up. And now I can't buy it anyway because CDs anymore, and yeah, it's hard to get, but.
Thank you.
And there was a recent challenge too, where some of the information was inaccurate. And especially with nonfiction, if the information is inaccurate, maybe it doesn't belong on our shelf. But it is important for us to have things that make us uncomfortable. Okay, there is a book out there that is just, it's a religious text against why trans people should go to hell and how awful it is and how they shouldn't exist. That is not a book that I was happy about putting on my shelf because it doesn't reflect my values, but it does reflect the values of some of the people in our community. And I think one of my most joyous time was when I was at the Fiction Movies and Music desk and somebody came up and they were showing their friend, Satanic Verses. I mean, it probably wasn't that title, but something like that, right? And the woman who was at the desk who they just said that to said, well, yeah, I know the library has some titles I don't like, but you know what? I can get all of my Amish fiction, all of my religious fiction, and since they buy that for me, I guess, you know, other people need their stuff too. And for a community member to say that with that mindset, I thought was like pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm back to Amish fiction too.
Yeah, we're all there.
So is that in German or English?
Wow, it's a whole thing.
Deutsch?
Really?
So
I'm going to have a lot of questions, but I'm not going to hold up the meeting.
I'm going to go search for Amish fiction.
Yeah, like, I have a list.
Do we have a whole section?
I think back to Erin's point, it's nice to know that, you know, if this would come to the board, it's important to be able to articulate clearly that, you know, realistic recommendation, and we don't always keep the material. And I would say if it ever does get to the board, we would want, at least I would want a chance to actually read the material or review it prior to the meeting. Because it'd be difficult to make a decision without seeing it in context.
I agree.
You know, I don't know if our policy says that, but it probably should. That we'd be provided, you know, ample time between the next meeting and, you know, to read the materials.
I don't think it articulates that, but
It does not.
Not articulated a timeframe, so.
But it should articulate that the board will at least have the opportunity to view or read, because you would think if you're going to make the decision, you should have viewed it or read.
We do, definitely.
Yeah, but we might not be, there's 2 copies in the library and there's
Right,
how many of us, right? So we may need some help getting the
right.
appropriate transcript or excerpt. Or
And they might say, well, you know, I'm making my complaint on Friday. I expect everybody to have read the 480-page book by Wednesday. So that,
Does that need to be in the policy or does that is that part procedure?
it could be procedure as long as it's articulated somewhere.
Am I understanding correctly that the board would have the final vote as to whether or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would that have to be consensus?
No.
No.
I would
just
assume it would be
majority?
like any other item. I've seen one come to I've dealt with a couple of challenges in schools, never had one come to the school board. I've had people come and complain at the school board, but never actually take the process to go through the process.
The times when institutions get in trouble is when they don't follow
Right.
the process. And there have been times, even in this community, where principals got a complaint from a parent and took the book off the shelf without
Right.
the process. That's when you're going to get in trouble. If you follow the process,
Just
trust the process, it's difficult sometimes.
Give the book the same due process you would give a person, and it usually solves the problem.
Thank you for presenting this to us. This was very helpful context.
Holly, you look horrified.
No, I'm not. I'm just thinking about
All of the books that you're
Not
going to
at all.
challenge later today?
helping in there now.
How much fiction?
No, I just think I'm really glad it is a well-communicated process and we know what it is and we know how to support you because I do trust that you saw the stats. I do trust that the public library is trying to have a fair and unbiased vetting process for the books and has a good way to respond. So I just want to make sure that we as a board support you in making sure that we are all doing this together.
Yeah, and one last thing that ALA advocates or recommends that libraries do is pass a resolution or a proclamation. And so that if you choose to give us that direction, we would love to draft something and bring to the next board meeting right ahead of Banned Books Week. It does kind of align really well. So if you're supportive of that, we're appreciative of your supporting individuals' rights and freedom to read, so.
I'm supportive of that, but I don't know what
Extremely.
procedure we follow. Yeah.
Do we need to vote on that, or can we just give the direction?
We shouldn't vote on it. It wasn't on the agenda, but we can give her the direction to bring it to us to vote next time.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, we will do that. We'll bring that back.
Great. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
I always think those have more meaning, like books that have been banned relatively locally. When you're putting that makes sense. Especially, things like
There was one,
Huck Finn, et cetera, that we all know that has value that,
I'm trying to remember the one, was it Entangle Makes Three or was it King and King?
It was before my time. It's been
That long ago. I know I don't have the email up.
Anything further for Kim? Great, thanks, Kim. We've reached the end of our agenda. Does anyone have any walk-on topics or questions? Hearing none, we will adjourn. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.